Howdy everybody, it's Amy here from Amy's Sparkly Diamond Painting, but this is an extra video because this is all about needlepoint. So I did my stash haul from the Tinsmith's Wife video yesterday, and one of the things I got was this needlepoint canvas and pattern and specialty threads, and I had several people asking me about doing a video on needlepoint, so I thought, sure, why not? That'll give me something new and different to do. And I will go back to doing some diamond painting videos probably tomorrow. I have one or two to unbox and a couple other things to show. Maybe we'll do a whip and chat tomorrow. But anyway, today we're going to talk about needlepoint, and this is not going to be a big tutorial, although I will maybe show a little bit for a couple of different basic stitches. But this is going to be all about what is needlepoint, what's the difference, what's out there available to buy, from kits to painted canvases and all that kind of stuff. And then we might end with me working a little bit on this one so you can see it in progress. But this is how far I've gotten on this one just yesterday. Actually, I did this little section this morning as I was waking up. But this is the Color Blocks pattern here from Needle Delights Originals, and they have several different charted needlepoint charts that look a lot like this design with various colors and stitches. This is meant to be a quilt, so you can kind of see the 9 quilt blocks here in the lines, and each one has a background main color. So of course I'm working on the yellow one here, and then the specialty threads go in the little highlights for all those different fabric squares, as I guess you would call it. So it's made out to look like a quilt with scrap fabrics. So that's why you see the yellow here with all those different colors. Hopefully you can see the shine there on the metallic threads and some of the other specialty threads in there mixed in between the yellow. So at the end, if this doesn't take too long, I don't think it will, we can work on our next little square in this and you can see how it goes. So this is, if you missed the video yesterday, this is my pack of threads that go with this particular kit. Very, very colorful, but full of all sorts of special threads like velvet and shiny things here, silks, all sorts of goodies in there. So it's been a lot of fun so far, which is why I've already gotten 3 little sections done on that one. But we'll go back to that. So let's talk about needlepoint in general. So needlepoint is slightly different from cross stitch. You only do a half a stitch instead of a full X. So it's just one diagonal, but it has several more differences than that. And I'll start with this for a visual aid. This is one that I haven't finished. It's from years ago, though. I bought this at an old San Angelo needlework store that unfortunately is long gone. It's called Needle Nook. It was one of my favorites. So we even have the old 915 area code way back when, so probably about 15 years ago. But what you'll notice here with the fabric is that the holes stand out more than the fabric. So if you compare this to Ida cloth for cross stitch, you see more fabric with tiny holes. Well, the difference with needlepoint is that this is a canvas, it's called mono canvas, and you have more hole than fabric, which means the stitching has to be different because you need to cover up what's behind and in front of these holes. So the holes are bigger, which means you can use thicker threads with it. So typically cross stitch, you're using cotton floss, 2 to 4 strands, or even 1 strand for the tiny stuff. But for needlepoint fabric, a lot of times you're using wool and other specialty threads that are a little bit thicker to cover up all those holes. So this is a hand-painted canvas that I bought several years ago. You can see the parts that aren't done. You can turn it over on the back and you'll see the back looks a little bit different as well. The back is more filled in, a little bit messier, because the point is that you want the back covered as well as the front so that you don't have any holes showing through. So you get good coverage. But you also have a chance for special stitches. Like here we've got some little satin stitch squares with some little tent stitch or half cross stitch areas around it. So you have a little more chance to play with different types of yarns and specialty threads. But he's still got a ways to go. I'm glad I found him the other day. Got a little spot of something there. But this is a hand painted canvas, and I only have a couple examples because they are very, very pricey. So the hand painted canvas is done by an artist who takes a design and actually paints all this. This is not done by machine. This is a nice thick paint, but you can see it covers exactly where each stitch needs to go. And I'll compare that to a kit that's machine printed here in a bit, and you can see the difference in quality. So you know exactly what color every single stitch is supposed to be because somebody hand painted that so that it would be very clear. So I have a second example here of a hand painted canvas. And this is a miniature dollhouse rug. Same thing, Needle Nook. Artist is Lee. They usually have their name on there somewhere. But this again is a hand-painted canvas. And this is miniature dollhouse rug. I've done a lot of parts of it. Here we can look at the back and see the coverage is very, very thick on the back. And again, that's so you don't see any holes when you look at it. So here's a close-up of the stitching. No specialty stitches or anything here, just basic needlepoint. But it is a gridded pattern, a lot like cross stitch, so you could convert a cross stitch pattern to needlepoint. You can do back stitch on needlepoint, but it's typically not done. But you could do that to outline some of the areas, but typically needlepoint is not done with any back stitch, so you want a pattern that usually doesn't include back stitch. So hand painted canvases can run a tiny one anywhere from $50 to $200 or $300 or more for a larger one, and that's why I only have these two little ones from years ago because they are quite pricey. So I prefer to do the counted method where you don't have to spend all that money on a hand painted canvas. They are nice, but they are very pricey. Okay, let's see. Let's talk about kits next, because I do have a couple here. So what do you do if you don't want to spend that much money on a needlepoint? This is a dimensions kit. I purchased this one on Amazon a few months ago, so this one is still very much available. You'll find that Dimensions has a lot of needlepoint kits still available, and you can get them Kirshner's and other craft stores. Michael's and Hobby Lobby don't seem to carry many big kits anymore. I guess they've moved on to other things. So there are craft stores out there, and of course always Amazon that do though. But this is the canvas for this kit. So you can see it's not hand painted. I've got to put something white in the background here so you don't see through. Here, we'll use that. Hopefully you can see that a little bit better with something white in the background, but you see all the holes there. But this is printed, so it's not always very clear exactly what color. This one's not too bad, but you can see it's a little bit more difficult to see. It can still be done, definitely. And you've got your color key here, so you can see what color is what. And this one does use DMC threads instead of wool. And usually with this type of canvas, it looks like maybe, looking for the count. It's probably, I'm not as good about guessing needlepoint mesh as I am with cross stitch fabric. Okay, so this is 14 count as well, but you see because it's more holes than fabric, you use the entire 6 strands. So this is the floss, and it's divided on these little, can't really call it a floss drop, but the same sort of idea, a little bundle of each color, and you use the entire thread, and that'll cover up the space there in the holes. So a lot of them also use wool, but wool is expensive, so you don't see too many kits with wool these days, at least not on retail sites. You can go on eBay though. If you're looking for a good deal with an older kit, you can go on eBay and find a lot of older needlepoint kits, but you do want to be careful because wool can be eaten by the larvae of moths. So you want to make sure that the kit that you're buying on eBay has been closed up or protected in some way. But these are the different colors here. Dimensions uses their own color coding system instead of the DMC numbers. But there you go, you can see. And because the canvas can be somewhat difficult to read, usually these kits will include not a full chart, but kind of a workup like this, where they show just general areas of color, almost more like a watercolor or acrylic paint by number type thing there. So you don't see each individual squares, you see more like blobs of color there. But you can use this if you're really having trouble telling what is what. So that is one example of a needlepoint kit. I've got another one here. It'll make too much noise. Let me just put that one down here. This one I bought years ago, and I bought it on eBay. And it took me a while to find it because my sister had done these for my mom, and I just fell in love with them when I saw it. This is an old Janlin needlepoint kit, and this is a petit point, which means it's done on a smaller canvas there, but I really liked these coasters. And I have shown this before, very early on. There's the one I've worked on. So here we go. So again, it is not hand painted, it is printed, and you can make out pretty well. Keep forgetting here, I need something white in the background when I talk needlepoint, because the canvas is showing everything that's behind it there and making it hard to see. There we go. So there you can see how the printing looks on needlepoint. This is smaller. This looks like not quite 18 count, but it is pretty small. There's some of the stitching I have done, and you can see again, I'll talk about the types of stitches there and how you get that coverage on the back as well as the front. But it does also warp because you're pulling thick yarns through this canvas that isn't supported a whole lot. I mean, those are big holes with just little tiny threads, so it does warp over time. So one of the final things you need to do after you finish a needlepoint is block it, and that means getting it wet and usually nailing it to a board perfectly straight and letting it dry so that it dries straight. So you can hopefully sort of see that this is already slightly warped here on this side where the canvas is pulling just a little bit there. So that's normal with needlepoint, and that's why blocking is such an important step at the end. So this was a set of coasters, and again, because the printing can be a little off, I believe, let me double check here. Nope, I don't have it in here. I thought this one maybe came with a chart, but maybe not, because this is quite a bit older, but this one does have a little bit of back stitch here to get the names of the different types of grapes. So I think there actually is a chart. It may just have fallen out into my box of projects that I keep this one in. So that is needlepoint kits and what you would expect if you are to buy one, if you want to try that route. So, and this one also used DMC floss. I guess I have one more older kit here. This is a collection that I've worked on getting through the years. I started collecting these when I was a kid, so most of these came from eBay. So you see these price tickets here are indicative of very old department store prices, but this is a three-dimensional village done on a plastic canvas needlepoint, and that's kind of why I brought this one into the picture, to see this is different type of threads here. But this is plastic needlepoint canvas, which means you can make something three-dimensional, like this little house. So I think I'm missing just one on this village, but I haven't tried really hard to find it either. I'm sure it's out there somewhere. Okay, modern kits. Now, these are the very recent modern kits you can get because they come from Europe. A lot of them come from Ukraine. Some of them come from Russia. But you can buy them in the US. You can find them on Amazon or 123 Stitch. So look for Petit Point, P-E-T-I-T point, or this one is called a tapestry kit. This brand is Luca S, but Letty Stitch is another brand where you can find them. So here we've got Republic of Moldova is actually where this one came from. So this is a small petty point here. I've got the floss cards. This again uses DMC here, but look at how tiny this is. Teeny tiny stitches, but when you hold it back, you really get the detail to show. Now I did jump, I was trying to stay with the background, but I was worried that my count got off, so I did jump into the flowers a little bit here to make sure that this side was going to match up with what was going on up there. And then I could, if it wasn't, I could work on the background to make it fit and make sure the flowers were what they needed to be. But those are the really darkest flowers. It shows up looking kind of dark. That's up in this little area here. But this is, you can see the fabric. It's got 10 by 10 lines marking off to make it easier to count, but it also has more holes than fabric. So this fabric is a Zweigart, and it's called Jobelin here, Goblen, and I've had a hard time finding this just empty, not in a kit. Empty. I've had a hard time finding this just blank for sale as fabric and not in a kit, but I really like it because it's really good for, say, full coverage cross stitches as well, because this is just 2 threads DMC, but I am doing it the needlepoint style because of the more holes than fabric, which again I will talk about here in a few minutes. The difference between half cross and tent stitch. So this is tent stitch, and that's why the back is filled in. It uses a little bit more thread, and you cover the back as well as the front. It's not meant to look neat, it's just meant to give a solid coverage so that you don't see any holes in the front. So really enjoying this, and it does come with a chart, and that is a counted kit. But you can use Heaven and Earth Designs and a lot of the other really neat patterns out there of high detail, which is why we have this here as well. And I've shown this before. This is a full coverage cross stitch technically, but I'm doing this on 25 count Lugana. So you can see this is more fabric than holes, but you can do the same thing. This is done as half cross stitch here. So here it is. It's got a little speck there. So this is an Animal Kingdom one, and I've just started the corner. Haven't really gotten back to it, but this is 2 threads here. I've got some parked threads. So I'm doing 2 threads to get the coverage, half cross stitch on this 25 count Lugana. Lugana is really, really cheap. You can get a what's called a fat quarter for like $7 or $8, and you can find it on Amazon as well. So definitely a more budget friendly, but you can do a really big project on a small thing, because 25 count, that's 25 stitches per inch. So that's going to come out really tiny, but that is an option. So you can buy needlepoint canvas at craft stores. This I got at Michael's just yesterday, as a matter of fact. This is 12 count, 12 squares per inch, and this is mono needlepoint canvas. So if you wanted to go budget friendly to try out needlepoint, you could. We're going to actually use this one here in a minute. That's why I'm opening it up. But you can go to local craft stores or some of the online craft stores and find basic canvas if you don't want to go the kit route and try to read the printing on them. So this is, again, you see the holes there, more hole than fabric. So this is, it's pretty stiff, so that's why it keeps trying to roll up on me. Since I'm going to use this here in a minute, I'm going to roll it the other way so that hopefully it flattens out. So that is a 12 point, that's big holes. And then here's another piece that I had that I was working on something years ago in the corner there. I used full 6-strand DMC floss and got pretty good coverage. But again, here's the back. So that is tent stitch, not half cross. And then finally, you can find plastic canvas that can also be used for needlepoint as well as cross stitch. So this one is a clear one. I'll pull out a sheet here, but there you can see You can do it for cross stitch or needlepoint as long as your thread is thick, because these holes are a little bit smaller. I don't know how well you can see that. Let me try dark under that. Nope, that's probably just going to be too hard to see, but you can find this online as well. So this is a little bit smaller. I think this is 14 count, but you can use this for cross stitch or needlepoint. And I guess while I have it here in my box, this is another Oriental rug that I was working on, dollhouse rug there. This is using DMC floss. There's the back, and still got a little ways to go. I got this from a book, and I saw those books still available out there. This is called Miniature Oriental Rugs. There's a lot of needlepoint books available out there if you want to spend the money. And actually you can get some that are, if you have Kindle and you do Kindle Unlimited, there are several that are free out there, and probably lots of tutorials that are free on YouTube as well. So I'm going to put some of these away, but I'm going to pull out some of the thread that I was using for this one. So it's a little bit different, but it's thicker. So I was going to talk about the stitches a little bit on this one. So I thought I'd use some of this thicker thread here. I don't have very many. I think I can spare some of this because that shop is long closed. I don't know if this thread is even available anymore, but I've done most of the dark colors here on this one, so I have more than enough. So we're going to talk about tent stitch, basket weave, and how it's a little bit different than cross stitch. And then we'll maybe do a little bit of a whip and chat with my one with the fancy threads here. So I actually just have an 11 count size. It's at 26. I don't know the needle numbers. I just know I grab them and just use them. And an 11 count needle works just fine for this. So here I just threaded my needle, and one way you can actually start needlepoint is with a waist knot. You can also do this with some cross stitch, although I typically don't, but I'm going to show it here. And you put a knot in it, and I'm just going to stitch across this corner just to show. So I'm going to go down with that knot holding it along the row that I'm going to stitch, and that way when I get done or cover up that thread, then I'll trim that knot and push it the rest of the yarn back down, and it won't show. So I'm going to start here in this corner. I'm going to kind of follow along this line so I can bury that thread here, but we're going to talk about half cross to start. So in half cross, you go down in one hole and up, and then you would go straight down below. Now this is not needlepoint, this is cross or half cross for cross stitch. Then you go straight down and across. So this is not what you do in needlepoint, but it's a start to show you the difference. So straight down and across. And that uses the least amount of thread, and you're not wasting very much thread, but I'm going to show you the difference on why you don't do this with needlepoint canvas. So this is a nice thick thread. It's covering pretty well, but you can go across, and that's how you would do, say, a half cross. And then you could go ahead and finish by going the other way for full cross. But again, that's not needlepoint, that's cross stitch, but I'm just showing you on this canvas how it works in case that helps you bridge the distance in your mind from cross stitch to needlepoint. So here you can see, because we are using thicker threads, we are covering up the holes, which is more about what you want. So the little intersection there between the holes, that is on the chart, if you're using a chart, that is the color that you're going to stitch that stitch. And that's, let me show you again on this one. I'll use the kitty again. So that's the part that's painted, is the little intersection there to show you what color goes in those holes. So I've covered this up. Now I can snip it here with my trusty KS cross stitch scissors there, and now that thread is covered and secure. So that is one way you can do it at the very start when you don't have anything to tuck underneath. So hopefully that's helpful. But you can sort of see what we have here on the back are just vertical lines. That's not covering the back of the canvas very well, and it can stretch the canvas. So that's why we don't typically do half cross when we're needle pointing. We instead do something called tent stitch. Looks the same on the front, but very different on the back to get that coverage. So again, let me show you, not on that one. That one's not as good to see the back. I did a lot of basket weave on that one. Oh, I probably shouldn't put things away that quick. Well, here we go, my petty point one. So here you can see with tent stitch, hopefully you can see that, we have what almost looks like longer diagonals on the back. Diagonals on the front, diagonals on the back, and that gives the better coverage and doesn't warp the canvas. And that is called tent stitch. So it looks the same on the front, but it's the back that's different. And you're no longer thinking about saving floss. You're going to use up a lot more. So I'm going to go to this row below and do tent stitch, which is forward and then back, kind of like a back stitch. So you're going to go, for this example here, I'll do right here. You're going to go up at the top and then down kind of in the opposite direction the row is going. So I'm going to come up. It's hard to do that in the camera. Here, and then down backwards from the direction. So we're moving this way, but we're finishing the stitch going in the backwards direction, if that makes sense. So up in the front, down, going backwards. So you see, you get the same result on the front, but in the back, you're doing more coverage because you got that long leg across the back. Think about where your yarn is going from the back as you're stitching. So it came down here and it's coming up over here. So that's a long diagonal that it made across the back. But that's how you support this fabric that has a bunch of holes in it and give the better coverage that you need so that you don't see any space in between. So I'm going to do this real quick. So that is tent stitch. So it's the same, just about, as half cross stitch, but you need to think in terms of using more thread rather than less. And in cross stitch, you don't want to jump across several stitches very often, but you can because it's going to cover up. Well, you'll notice in needlepoint, if I were to jump over here, because of the holes, you will be able to see that through the front. Even sometimes if you cover it, especially if it's a shiny thread or something, and I go back and fill in a different color over here, you might still grab little tiny pieces of that thread and it can kind of show through. So you don't want to jump quite as often as you do with cross stitch. You want to be very careful about just carrying your thread across because it will show in all those holes. But we're going to turn this over and look at the back now and see the difference. So you see how the back is these little diagonal lines as opposed to these little tiny straight stitches. Now they're diagonal. And that gives better coverage on the front. You can't really tell on this one because I am using pretty thick thread and I haven't gotten very far. So let's go back the other direction. So we're going to be moving this way. So our stitches need to end going that way. So I'm going to start in this hole down here and work backwards this way. So kind of the opposite of what we did there. So we're making diagonals again, covering that second row, but we're ending the stitch in the opposite direction that we're going with the row. And if you want to do going vertical, it's the same idea. You think about how much thread can I use. So I'm going to go, if I'm going down, I'm going to go bottom and then up and bottom and then up. It's no longer about conserving thread. It's about using it all up to cover that space. So if I look on the back here, I'll do one or two more here. There we go. So again, you got that diagonal coverage, which really helps fill it in. So let's talk about basket weave just briefly, and then we'll get into my color block one here. So you see this weird design on the back here of this one. For large areas of the same color, it's really good to do a stitch called basket weave. And this also, actually, I've translated just slightly into diamond painting because I work in the diagonal for large areas, and it's kind of the same idea. You work in the diagonal on basket weave, and it helps support the canvas again so that it needs less blocking and keeps its shape very well. So the way basket weave works, let me just pick another area here, is you work in the diagonal. So if I should have brought, well, this is just a test canvas here. So yeah, don't Sharpie your canvas, but let's say we had the top edge of something. I'm trying to draw this straight line here. And I always stitch mine bottom left to upper right. So let's say we were filling in this spot. I would start with the corner stitch here. Bottom left, upper right. Okay, now for the next one, I would go here next to it, bottom left, upper right. But instead of going across the row, I'm going to work in the diagonal. So the next one would be the first stitch below it. Bottom left, upper right. And then I'm going to work back the other direction. Bottom left, upper right, and it makes a really neat pattern on the back. So then diagonal would be, I can't see that through the camera, this one right here, bottom left, upper right, and then finally up to this row. And each time you're doing one more stitch in that row as you fill in across a diagonal there, bottom left, upper right. So now we got two in the middle here before we get to the other end. And this is the basket weave stitch. So you're always coming up in an empty square, so you're not pulling on your thread or anything that you've already stitched, and you're going down through what you've already stitched. So we'll go one more diagonal here, bottom left, upper right, and we're just filling in this area here. And of course, if you have different shapes in there, then you kind of work around them if they're different colors and all that. So this is really good for larger areas. But we're going to look at the back here after one more row because I want to get enough so that you can see the basket weave there showing up on the back. So you can imagine what your thread is doing on the back. So think about as you're stitching, see I'm going down this hole. Now I'm getting a straight line down to reach that next diagonal. And then straight vertical line down to reach that next diagonal. So you can kind of picture what your thread is doing on the back. So on this pass, I'm doing straight vertical lines going down. And then on the pass back the other direction, I'm doing horizontal. So that thread, I should go one more. There we go. It's hard to stitch and talk at the same time. So now with my pass back upwards, on the back, if you picture what your thread is doing, it's going horizontal. So you're making horizontal and vertical lines of thread on the back, which helps fill in that space on the back. So let's take a look after I finish this pass here at what we got. and I think you probably have seen enough where you can figure out what we have. There we go. We have a basket weave. Isn't that pretty? Makes for a really neat back, but it's also a lot of coverage, and because you're always going up in empty holes, you're not messing with the threads you've already stitched and splitting them and all that. It's just a really nice way to stitch. So we've got half cross, which is just the up and down, can mess up your canvas a little bit if you're not careful, and it doesn't cover as well. Then we have the tent stitch, where you end in the hole that is opposite the direction you're going, vertical and horizontal, and also diagonally. So you can do the same idea. It's how much thread can you use instead of how little can you use. So I'm going to go diagonal from here. So I'm going, again, ending opposite the direction I'm going. So I'm going down this line, and I'm ending at the top. So it's filled in more. And same going the other direction. But the stitches are going to look a little bit different. So if I were to then go diagonal off of this one, in the opposite direction, it would be a little bit different. Bottom left, upper right, bottom left, upper right. And you'll see those gaps in between, which will be filled by other colors. So there is a slight difference in how tent stitch looks versus cross stitch in the end because of the diagonals there. So that's a diagonal going that way. That one's going in the opposite direction to the way your stitches lie. So you always want to make sure your diagonals go in the same direction. So it might be tempted to switch direction to get that straight line, but then it won't match up with other stitches. So you always make sure your diagonal goes the same direction. And I'm not sure if I have enough here to, probably not. Maybe we'll talk about it when we work on the other one. But now that, I'll go ahead and pull one more out. Now that I have other threads in there, I don't need to do the waist knot. This is so thick, I can't use my usual technique. My usual technique is fold in half and squish it through for cross stitch, but because this is thicker, I have to just push it through. Yeah. I might have to edit some of my struggles out here to make this video short enough, because this just does not want to thread for me. Maybe the other end. Sometimes I'll trim the end if it's being difficult and see if I can get it. There we go. Okay. So I don't have to do a waist knot. I've got enough here that I can secure it in stitches that I've already made. Just make sure, again, you don't want to have like a black thread secured underneath a bunch of white, because it will show. So make sure that the colors are compatible and you don't see it through the front. But we're going to talk about one of the other very common stitches with needlepoint, and that's satin stitch, which is also a cross stitch. Like if you're working on linen and doing specialty stitches, satin stitch is a pretty popular one. And long stitch as well is the same idea. But we'll do a diagonal stitch here. Now satin stitch is where you make longer stitches. So I'm going to do a big old square here. So I'm not going to stop and end in the next hole. I'm going to stretch it all the way across. And then I can shrink this square by making it a little smaller. And finally a little bit smaller. And this is where the specialty stitches start coming through for needlepoint, because you can, for specialty stitches and stuff, do all sorts of patterning and going different directions, because you don't have to follow just the little intersection there. You can do all sorts of things. So I'm going to go in the opposite direction for the stitch next to it and get some texture going here. So I'm going to make another square next to it, but I'm going to make my diagonals go the opposite, which over here I said you don't want to do that for regular tent stitch. But if you're doing specialty stitches, then you do, maybe, because you'll get a whole different texture here. So I'm going to do this square going the opposite way. And hopefully you'll see. I think you can. I think I picked some big enough canvas here that you should be able to see. You see that little dividing line between the two, and the shine and everything is slightly different. And then we can do the same down here, going the opposite. And we can create this little corner of 4 squares with satin stitches that give a really neat texture here. So you don't always have to fill in design with plain stitches. You can even do this for backgrounds and stuff to give them a little bit, losing my voice here. Go for the energy drink. To give them a little bit more interest in the background. So there's a lot more creativity available, I think, with needlepoint, in the types and number of stitches and the types of threads and everything out there and what you can use. So you can also do horizontal. So let me jump over here and do something here. So I'm going to go horizontal across 2. Sometimes you find these kits from the old days called long stitch, and that's what's going on here. It's horizontal and vertical stitches, but you need thicker yarn for this because you'll see the coverage isn't as good in the horizontal. You can sometimes see your canvas lines coming through. So I'm not a fan of long stitch, but if you have thick enough yarn, you can get away with doing designs in the horizontal and vertical as well, like that. But you can see the gaps there, so I'd need a thicker wool for this one. But then I could maybe go, let's see, I could go 4, then 2, and 2, and 4, and basically did the opposite there, which then left me a spot here to do another one just like I did before. So you get these different textures that you can do here, but this yarn really wouldn't be good for this particular canvas. I need either thicker yarn or a smaller canvas to do that. So, and I guess one final thing I should mention, I didn't grab one when I was setting up to do this video. Let me finish that. There we go. So just a different little texture, but I'd need thicker yarn for this canvas. So that's kind of the fun of needlepoint, is you can start playing, you can do long diagonals, you can do all sorts of different shapes on here and just come up with neat designs that give various textures. And that's what's going on here. You got a lot of satin stitches and stitches going different directions to make those different squares. But basic needlepoint, let me move this out of the way, is just, getting scraps here, is just tent stitch and charted tent stitch and petty point. But one of the things you might think about, and I wish I brought one with me, is what if I have all these stamped cross stitch kits and I've invested money in those? How do I switch to needlepoint? Well, you can do half cross on those with double the amount of threads it calls for and come up with the same sort of thing. So I've done that for backgrounds on a couple of my bigger, like 11 counts that had large areas of background. I think I showed a dragon one in the past, a big orange and yellow bright dragon that was a product review package, but it had a lot of black in the background. So what I ended up doing was, it normally used 3 threads for an 11 count. I doubled it to 6 threads and did half cross, just using the squares. Now the problem with that on cross stitch fabric is that the holes aren't very big and you really have to yank and pull to get that thickness of yarn through. Now this is made with more hole than fabric, So it's a little bit easier to do that. And when you start getting into like the 25 count Lugana here, that is a little bit closer to cross stitch fabric. It's used for both. So you can do half cross, and this is half cross, not tent. Although it's a mess because there's so many colors here. So that one I just did half cross because there was enough fabric there that I didn't worry about the coverage behind all the holes on there. So you can do half cross stitch on your stamped to get the backgrounds done. Just make sure you double the threads so that you don't see the fabric underneath. And that's why this one, even though it's 25 count, I'm using 2 threads to make sure to cover all the white on this. You can almost see a little tiny bit of white coming through on these darker threads. But if you were to do full cross on a 25 count, 1 thread would be plenty because you're going both ways on the diagonal, so it would be covered up. So that's kind of the intro, but people wanted to see how these specialty threads work and everything, so I thought I'd do a little section of this, if you're still with me, and show you how this particular one is working. I need to steal my needle back, which I left in this one. So I'll talk a little bit more detail about this. Okay, where's my needle? I'm gonna try to lose it. So this is in 9 blocks, and each block has a main color. So I'm working on this top color here, and the main color is a yellow. And then within each block, you have the little sections here of what are supposed to be like scrap fabrics that you're basically trying to reproduce. So you have this master chart that shows each block and how it's divided into sections. And I don't want to show the whole pattern here, but within each block you get one of these. And this is the more detailed, so I'm working on block A, and it shows you which order to do them in and what the stitch count is for each one. So I finished A1, A2, A3, the next one is the one right beside it here, A4, and then you just keep going. So I don't think this will cause too much trouble if I show this. So here's block A4, and this is how a needlepoint chart looks. It's a little bit different, especially for this kind of design. Although you can do a full coverage cross stitch the same way, and it looks like the same with just, you know, individual stitches, but this one is all about specialty stitches. So A4 is 14 by 26 threads, and you see the different colors here for the different colors of thread used. And what this chart recommends is that you do it in the order that it shows. So for each one, you got a first thread, second thread. In this case, there are 3. So I'm going to start with WC 276 and do all these black stitches. And you see there's satin stitches. It shows each intersection there in the background and how many intersections you're covering with each stitch. And then N80 is the white, and it's just highlights here on each corner. So WC 276 I've already used once, so that's how I know, but I have my code here on the back, my color chart here. So NC is, let me just double check because I think it is the watercolors here, Karen watercolors, or WC, sorry, WC, that makes more sense. I was like, where's the N in that? WC watercolors, number 276. So 276 here is Tequila Sunrise, and I have indeed used that one already. So most of these squares have started with a Pearl 5 cotton. This is 18 count, so it's got littler holes. So the Pearl 5 cotton works just fine with it. So this has been the main background color, but I already know this color because I've used it once, and I think I have more threads of that. Well, let me get this out of the way. So I try to tie the label on. I haven't like separated and pre-cut these because I want different lengths based on how much coverage or what area I'm covering. So I try to keep the label with it tied on somewhere. So this is watercolors, and I do have one thread I cut. So I tried to make sure that the thread I cut, because this is variegated, had all the different colors in it. But this is a little short for the area. I think I'm going to go ahead and cut another one that has just a little bit more of the oranges and other colors in it. So that first one, I basically went from orange to pink and then cut it. I'm going to go a little further with this one and make it a little bit longer because there are more stitches here. So with the watercolors on this one, it is 3 strands and you only need 1. And the directions told me that at the very beginning. So it told me use 1 strand of the Pearl 5, separate the 3 strand watercolors into 1, and then use the rest of the specialty threads as they come. So pretty basic there. You only need to remember 3 of them. Pearl 5 single strand, watercolors 1 of the 3, and then all the rest single strand. So we're going to save this so we don't lose track of that one. And I may zoom in here in a minute. But this is got enough color changes in it that I think it'll work pretty well. So I'm going to thread my needle with this one long strand. And we're working, let's see if I can make this fit here. Let me keep bumping the camera. Let me zoom in. I'm working just in hand. Most people with needlepoint, in order to keep their canvas from warping and getting misshapen, they will put it on a frame. I don't. I just work in hand. I just prefer it and find it easier. I do have a few larger kits that I have mounted on a frame, but that's cross stitch, not needlepoint. Okay, so we're going to look at a pattern here. So this first block, I'm so zoomed in, is a different color. So we're going to start 1 to the 3rd intersection in. So I can see the holes there and I can see where those intersections of fabric. So I'm counting 1, 2, so that 3rd one, and the stitch goes diagonally that way. So I'm going to go under here. I know it's right next to this one because of the master layout. And I'm going to tuck my thread. Make sure that doesn't show through the front because I tucked that on some yellow. Ooh, I'm zoomed in. I might be able to stitch this through the camera. So I'm going to count over 1, intersection 2, and there's the 3rd one. And I'm going to go diagonal bottom left to upper right. Bottom left to upper right. So I just did that stitch. Now the next one, I'm going to start below and go across 2 diagonals so it ends even with that one. So I'm going to go below where that one was. And then I'm going to end even with that one. So a little bit longer stitch. And then this one is a little bit more complicated than the ones I've done before, because what we have, the pattern gave these light black lines here. Those aren't stitched, those are just so you can see the pattern developing. So what we have are these smaller squares here, and then it goes longer. So I just did that one, I just did that one. I'm going to do this row of 3 little stitches. And then I'm going to do 2 longer one really longer one shorter, and 1 shorter to make the block. So it is a little bit more complicated than cross stitch, but we'll get through it. So I'm going to next do these 3, all go in the same direction here. These next 3 little stitches, and you can memorize the pattern over time. So I'm going to start here at the top and do 1 little stitch, 2 little stitches. Hopefully my hand isn't shaking too much. It looks like my pulling is causing my fabric to shake. And 3. And I know that's right because I still have a straight line here where I ended there. So it ended in line with the others. So little stitch, longer stitch, 3 little stitches. Now I'm going to do 2 of the longer stitches. So I'm going to come down and go halfway up. That would be across 2 intersections there. And because I just came down that hole, I need to go across to the other end of that stitch so I can come down. So now we have those 2. Then I'm going to go ahead and thinking about my yarn traveling. I want the I want the yarn to cover the back as much as possible. So I'm going to go down here, and we've got the long stitch here to make up the bottom half of this square, and then a shorter. That one was 3 intersections, 2, and then 1. So there, we made our square. And again, we can compare to the fabric. So I did the 1, then the one that went across 2 intersections, then the 3 little stitches, then the 2 and the 2. You can count the intersections there, 1, 2, 1, 2. Then this one went all the way across 3, 2, 1. And then we're going to do that 2 more times across this row. And now that we've finished one, we can use this one as a reference to do the other 2, so we don't have to look at the chart anymore. So I'm going to start here at the top like I did with the other one, and I'm going to do the 1 little. And the fun part of this specialty thread is that it's going to change color as we keep working. So then I want to go down into that next one here and go across 2, and you want these to match up right next to each other. So 1, 2, you don't want to leave any space between them. And then we do our 3 little diagonals. There's 1, 2, and you can see that this is just thicker than DMC thread, so it does take a little more tugging to pull. You don't want to pull too tight though, because you will then distort the shape of the canvas. Then we have the 2 shorter ones. So I'm going to start again at the bottom, just because it uses a little bit more thread, gives a little bit more coverage there. 1, 2, go in there. And then up 2. Oops, hit my light there. And back down. So there's our 2 medium stitches. Then we got a really long one here across 3 intersections. There's 1, 2, 3, and you can tell it's lining up below these other stitches to make a square. And then come back down next to that one and do 1, 2 right there, and then 1. So there's 2 of those done. Makes a neat little pattern there, especially since this is shiny thread. It shines in the light. So then that's 2 of them. We need just 1 more. So we can reference this 1, 2, 3. And that's it. And then we'll offset by half a square and do 3 more and 3 more and 3 more. And then these little corners will be filled in by another color. So I'll just do a couple rows of this, and then I might park it and do the other part so you can see, because this video is already shows 59 minutes here. I don't want to make this too long. But we'll do, and it's pretty easy to memorize these stitches over time. So I know there's 1. And again, I've got these other ones here that I can see. So this next one is a 2. 1, 2. Oops. Wrong hole. I drew the border of this with one of my heat flexion or friction pens. Those disappear when you add heat to them. So they're pretty easy to go away. I missed the hole there. So that line helped me see that right away. So then our 3 little ones. 1. I hope I'm not making you dizzy. I should look more into the camera rather than around it to see what I'm doing the way you guys see it. So I'll try that here for this square and see if I can do that, because I am pretty zoomed in here. Yeah, I can do that. So there's our 3, and then we have the 2 stitches that have 2 intersections to them. I felt that. I actually stitched into my my thread I had sitting beside me here. Don't do this at home, friends. Okay, let's pull that one back out. Let's go back through the same hole. And hopefully I didn't split that thread. No, I did not. Okay, move that further away. We don't want the whole batch in there. Okay, let's try that again. So we do our 2, 1, 2. And then the other half of that, 1, 2. And you kind of develop a rhythm over time. And then our long one with 3. 1, 2, 3. And then 2. 1, 2. And then our little one. So that is the end of section A4. So the next section will be A5. But here we hit the end. So you'll see these go the opposite direction. But what we need to do is start here and go back that way. So I was kind of doing them top to bottom diagonally this way, but now I got to figure out how I'm going to count and do that next stitch, next square. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to, because this line's up here, that's an easy one to count. So I'm going to do this little one and the medium, and then maybe the little, the medium, the little, and then start going back that way. But then I end over here, and the next one is over here. So you do have to do a little thinking. So I still think this is the easiest one to pick up on, right below the edge of that square. And then do the little one, and do the long, medium, short, and then go back and catch them going this way. We'll try that. So the change in direction is causing a little bit of, so I'm going to do this little one here that matches up with that square. That was an easy one. And then we had a short one next to that. So we're going to come up, count 2, and go there. And then the next one, so we just did these 2, but the next one is a long one that covers 3 intersections going back that way. So I'm going to do that one next. I think I will do, yep, it's even there. So 1, 2, 3. So it's going to be down here. 1, 2, 3. Because remember, this square is offset from this one. So this square is ending halfway through that one. So we do the 3 the 2, and then the 1, and then go back up here and finish the other half of that one, which was the other half of that 2. And then our 3 little ones, well, we've already got one of our little ones done here. That's where I started. So 2. So I'm just working this first one kind of backwards, and that lines me up for the others. And I'm also thinking, because this is variegated, I'm trying to keep the colors somewhat together instead of jumping around too much. There's our 2, and then our 1. So kind of a backwards way of doing that square, but it lined me up being right up here ready for the next one. And I think I'll go ahead and just use the extra thread and just start this one the way I did the other one, so I can count how many intersections here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll put 1, 2, 3, 4. So I can go across 1, 2, 3, 4 and start there. And also know that it's halfway across that other square that's above it. So 1, little 1. I know it seems confusing, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. There's the longer one. And then our 3 little ones here. But you can see how that variegated yarn here that I'm using is giving a really neat effect to these. And you can kind of work in the direction that you want the variegation to go. So for example, where I used it here, I did these squares going this way across, so that it went from pink to orange to yellow back to orange. But I could have done across and back. I could have done different ways, but I just decided to go dark to light on that one. So that's that same thread here. So we haven't quite gotten to the pink yet, but it's coming. So then we do our 2 half. 1, 2. 1, 2. And then our long one here. 1, 2, 3. And then 2. Hopefully this isn't too shaky. So just count those intersections if you're doing specialty stitches like this. Now if you're just following a basic chart, believe me, it's much easier. And as I said, you can get the supplies right now at your local craft store. I mean, even Walmart sells some basic cross stitch fabric, 14 and 18 count, and floss, and you can just use half cross stitch and a pattern that's available for free. DMC offers a lot of free ones, and there are just lots of charts out there. Etsy is full of them as well. So we'll do a little one there, and we're back up against our other square here. 1, 2, and then our 3 little ones. 1, and I say there are no rules in cross stitch. I mean, you do whatever stitches, you're basically making an X. So you go whatever direction and all that you want. The reason needlepoint might be just slightly different is because of the coverage, because you want the back to be covered. I think I've said it enough times that you probably get the hint there. You want the back covered to give it more support and to cover up all those holes. But whatever way you choose to do that, it's up to you. 1, oops, that's 1, 2. That one feels off. Let me make sure I went in the right hole there. What? I did not. That's why I was like, wait, that's off. That's the hole we want. 1, 2. All right, we're going to come up on the pink soon. 1, 2. And I'm going to also be thinking about my next thread, because I'm going to use this up and I'm going to have to get a second piece, and I'm going to have to decide which end to start with and which end to finish on based on how it looks. Do I do just completely different colors, or do I try to match them up? So there's our 3, our 2, and I'm going to go ahead and do one more row. I'll do it kind of quick so that we can park it, and then I'll do the other color, but that'll give me enough because there's only little bits of that other color I want a third row to be able to really show it. Okay, so these were all offset by half a square. I'm going back the other direction, but it's the same square. So now we do the same and go this way. So we're basically going to copy that first row. So we count into 1, 2 intersections and do the third here. So we do our little stitch and then our bigger one, and then our 3 little, and you just kind of get used to the pattern over time. Of course, with this one, it's these little sections are kind of small that once you get the hang of the pattern, it's ready to do a different one. But for me, that's the enjoyment of these, so that you're not doing the same thing over and over and over. You have new and different things coming through. And our 2 medium stitches. I say medium just within reference to this particular square, because a medium stitch for a longer square would be a different count probably. So there's our 2, and then our long 3, and our 2, and our 1. So this is probably a little bit more detailed than maybe you wanted to see, but I haven't really done a stitch and chat. Tomorrow's going to have to be diamond painting and whip and chat day, but for today, it's fun to do something different. So we do 3 of these, and I want to go ahead and continue because we're in the pink here. So there's our little stitch and our longer one. And then our 3 little ones. So hopefully everybody's surviving the spring weather. It's been kind of rough out there. Every day it seems like somebody's getting hit with hail, big tornadoes. It's been a rough spring so far. So hopefully you're making it through okay, at least in the US. I know I have several international customers out there. Oh, and for those that are also into diamond painting, Art Dot is sending me a sample of their new release that they have going right now of diamond painting kits. So I'm going to be sharing that with you when it arrives here, probably in the next couple days, and do an unboxing for the Art Dot new. Something doesn't look right there. Yep, that's right. Okay. It just, oh, no, it's not. I was like, wait a minute, that's not right. That's looking like a rectangle. Pull that one out. I forgot the 2 medium stitches there. I was trying to do the long stitch already. Uh-oh. Pepper, say hi. So I've got some cool unboxing stuff coming. I'm working on a product review package from GBFKE that's kind of neat because it's a 3-dimensional thing, but I wanted to actually finish the diamond painting part and do the assembly on camera, so that one may come tomorrow. because I'm very close to finishing, but it's something I need to seal before I assemble it so that the diamonds don't fall off anywhere. So that'll be coming for my diamond painters out there. And our last little square in this row, and I may go ahead and end this thread. I made it kind of long because this canvas is rough. Your threads do get a little beat up over time, so you can see the end here is starting to fray. So normally I wouldn't go too long depending on the type of thread. Pearl cotton is twisted pretty well, so it doesn't fray very much, but this is a blend of silk, I believe. Let's see. Oh, and it even has how to use for different types of canvases, but I believe, does it say? Nope, this is cotton. Okay, 3-ply Pima cotton. But it is fraying a little bit here. So you want to use shorter threads typically because the canvas is kind of rough. So it will beat up your thread over time. But we'll finish this last square, and then in this one I just wanted to get some of the pink in there. 2, 3, and I won't forget my 2 medium stitches like I tried to do last time with the last square there. 1, 2, and 1, 2, and then our long one there across 3. 1, 2, 3, and then 2. And that one. So we kind of faded from orange to yellow to pink, but that's because we went this direction. So if I had gone maybe down and up and down, then I would have had a slightly different color look to it. I'm curious. Here is their version. Here, hard to tell which direction they went on it. But our next color here are these little diagonals in the corners. So I'm going to go ahead and end that thread there, just in the interest of time. There, tuck it through. Looks good. And cut it. So now we'll see what the other color is that we need to do. So we have 3 little spots available for that one. And I believe it is a neon ribbon. So N80 is the color. And the neon rays have the number on them. And it looked like a yellow, so let's see if I can peek through. Nope, that's velvet. That's V646. I thought it was kind of a yellow. That's part of the fun of not having these things organized and just stuffed in a bag. So, bear with me here for just a second. Maybe it's a light green. Maybe it's this one. Okay, it is a yellow. So neon rays, look how shiny that is. So this is 100% rayon, which is kind of like the silky threads from the budget-friendly cross-stitch kits. 10 yards, and this is a ribbon shape. So these cards have a little cut in them right here that holds the thread for you. But some of these are a little bit different and they fray easier. So that's why sometimes there are little highlights on here. So this one, it even has little bends here where it was twisted in. And this is a ribbon. So I'm going to cut a short piece here. So I'm going to put this end back in the little slot there to keep it from fraying. Since I'm only doing a few little sections with this one, and I'm going to cut it. So I'm going to thread this end because this end is already frayed. I could tuck that. I'll just go ahead and cut it. We got enough here. So I'm going to thread this in my needle. Boy, I'm so close. Oop. Do it the old-fashioned way that I like, which is fold, pinch, and stick it through. Yeah, that worked for that. So very shiny little ribbon here. And with flat things like ribbons, and it even tells you in the directions, you want it to try to lay flat as you're stitching it and not get all twisted. So that's also why I picked a shorter piece. And let's go back to our pattern because we're going to switch directions here. So it shows that the diagonals go in the opposite direction here, and just covering up those little rectangles on each end. Now what I will probably do, instead of jumping here to here to here, I will use this piece and just go down. And then maybe use another piece to do this end, so I'm not stretching this precious stuff all the way across like that. So I'll do these two. So we start with a little diagonal going the opposite direction up here, oops, in the corner. So we're going to go from here to here. So we will tuck it in, pull. Now this is a little bit thinner, a little bit loose. So what I like to do to make sure it doesn't pull through is I'm going to make a little loop. So I'm going to go back through the same direction and pull. Now it's much more secure. So I'm going to go top left to lower right. There. And pull very carefully because I don't want it to get all twisted. And have it just kind of lay on top like that. And then we go diagonally down. Top left, lower right. And carefully make sure that it lays flat, like that. Next, hold down from that one, top left. And you also don't want to split it. As you bring the needle up, you don't want to split into the stuff you've already stitched, because that can make a mess. Down to lower right, pull carefully so it lays flat. And it's giving that extra little, see there, I tried to split the one above it. So I want to carefully poke through that hole there and not catch the ribbon that I already stitched. So a neat little texture. So we got 3 long stitches there. And then our little stitch in the corner there. Top left, lower right. There we go. What do you think? It's kind of the same stitch as what's next to it here. The rectangle is a little bit smaller, and it's the shiny ribbon instead of the pearl cotton, so it does still show up, just a little bit different. So now we can do the exact same thing right below it. Top left, and I'll go a little bit faster on this one. Top left. But you don't want to pull too hard because you want it to lay on the canvas so that you get that ribbon look to it. Boy, 1 hour and 24 minutes. I will end here once I finish the second rectangle. But you don't have to buy all the fancy stuff to just try out needlepoint. You can check your local craft store and see. I know my Hobby Lobby sells 25 count Lugana in the little packets. Let's see, do I have a packet here? I thought I did. Nope, I did not grab it. But you can get the 25 5 count Lugana. It's square, well, I'm so zoomed in, square packets that are hanging. And then Michaels also sells even the mono canvas and pearl cotton for both of them if you wanted to just start simple. Or you can download a pattern on Etsy or Heaven and Earth Designs if you want to go big. All sorts of options out there so that you don't have to pay big tariffs, which May 2nd is when those go into effect. So far all the orders that I have outstanding have at least made it to the US. So I don't think I have any tariffs on what I have so far, but I do want to do a test order. After May 2nd, I'll order on something by some sort of cross-stitch kit from Biggest Craft. I haven't shopped from them in a while, or one of the budget-friendly companies, and see how the tariffs go. But every company is going to have a different way of dealing with that, either raising the prices a little bit and charging you a little bit when it comes in, or both, or a combo, or who knows what. So I'm going to test out a little bit and see how that works. But there's our little section with some of the specialty threads, and hopefully this was interesting. Hopefully you got something out of it related to needlepoint, which is something I hadn't really covered yet. So, but once I saw this pattern, oh, it's so pretty, I couldn't resist it. So I'm going to finish the square, and then the pattern has me do this one next, and that one looks like some bigger satin rectangle blocks here. Yep. With some little stitches, 3 different sizes of squares there. So we've got the bigger squares, the little one, and then the medium one, and alternating with 3 different. So we have pearl cotton there, number 5, basic pearl cotton there. That's at 726, the same color that's kind of holding this square together because it's all throughout there. And then N128 and V646. I don't think I've used V yet. I'll have to look at my chart. So V is the velvet. So the next one will have some of the velvet in it, cool. And then N is what I'm using now, the neon rays. So let me know what you think. Was this useful to you? I'm gonna try to finally organize my videos. I need to create playlists and separate these out as I venture into more things. So hopefully you will give needlepoint a try if you've always wanted to and were curious. Just remember, you're covering the back as well as the front, and that's why the stitches are a little bit different. So thank you for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think. Should I continue more of this, or should I just show you updates, or would you like to see more stitch and chats on this one as well as the diamond painting stuff? So stay tuned, and I'll catch you later.